I have a very close friend who passed away late last year who's also a triathlete. And I asked him the same thing. And I said, so are you sure you didn't have symptoms? And he's like, oh, I did. He said, but I chalked those up to my workouts and I chalked them up to a life spent on a bike and running and beating the heck out of my body. And so even looking back now, no, I don't see those symptoms. I didn't experience those symptoms. 2 diagnoses in about 14 months. I finished treatment for prostate cancer in July of 2022. I got this diagnosis in August of 2023. So a year later, I was back in the game. I was an evangelist because of a previous diagnosis for routine testing and screening. So I went in for a colonoscopy on schedule, right? Fully expecting, I'm really just checking a box here, or I should do it. I'm just going to go. Everything was normal leading up to it. I went in, had the best sleep of my life, which is how I sales pitch getting colonoscopies. Came out of it, and the nurse said to me, the doctor's going to come in and see you, which I didn't think is being atypical because typically the doctor is the one who debriefs you. It's not necessarily the recovery room nurse. And he came in and I'll never forget it. I knew the minute he walked in, I'm like, oh, this can't be good at all. And he said, so I found a couple polyps, and then he put his hands up like this and he said, and I found a significant mass. The only thing I think of to ask was, well, how significant? Right? And he said, it's very significant. You need to get a referral on the way out. And literally that was it. And in minutes, it's like you go through that in minutes. We were out in the bright August sunshine, like nothing had happened, with birds chirping and everything else. And I guess my senses were kind of on fire because I remember kind of walking out into the sunshine and just feeling like, what now? Like, what do we do? What does this mean? What's going to happen? And just so many questions. I'm in this valley between, something is wrong, something is significantly wrong. You haven't really been staged yet, right? And so, but you know that it's significant. And then there's a gap between the time something's wrong and the time you get the definitive diagnosis and the tumor staged and the time you actually begin treatment. And that valley is a rough period of time. And, most people, including myself, fill that time Googling every word in your MyChart, joining online forums, which are not the best place to get information in a lot of regards. Very quickly, they said, and by the way, given your health profile, given your age profile and your ability to withstand this regimen, we think you're perfect for this clinical trial. I know it's experimental. I know the limits of clinical trials. The third thing, which you probably don't hear very often, was, for me, I felt like it leveled the playing field. And I'm like, all right, so I'm a research subject. You now need me as much as I need you. And so we're on equal footing. So I hope to get into the experimental part of this. And I did. I was ecstatic when they called and said, hey, guess what? You're in the experimental group, because I would have felt like, all right, so I'm only going to get 2 chemo drugs instead of 3. And that 3 sounds better than 2. So in addition to the oral, I had 27 days of radiation, 27 days of oral chemo pills, and then a short break to assess how everything went. And then it was a total of 8 biweekly infusions with a regimen where I went in for the entire day, got 2 of the chemo drugs, and then had a take-home pump for 2 days afterwards. I will say, I needed to do a couple battles with my insurance company. One in particular, and I got a call right before I started radiation, and they said, look, we're going to change your location, literally up the block. And I said, okay, not a problem. I'll be at the new location. And just on a whim at the end, I said, just curious, why are we changing it? And the receptionist said, well, it's a different machine. I said, oh, how's it different? And she said, well, one is a 3D machine. The other is a 2D machine. And I said, well, why are we switching it? She said, well, your insurance company wanted you to have the 2D machine. And I said, so I don't know a lot about Ds, except that 3D sounds better than 2D. And maybe we should be having a broader conversation about this. Can you get the doctor on the phone? Because we can certainly do a doctor-to-doctor call with the insurer to ensure that this is the best possible decision, which we did. And within 10 minutes, I was back in the 3D machine. For me, it emphasized you got to kind of be on your guard and be ready, willing, and able to advocate for yourself, even when you're not sure that you need to. I realized very quickly, and they had said it a million times and I didn't hear it, is that the chemo is cumulative and the side effects are cumulative. So literally the first infusion set, I'm there actually eating pizza in the infusion room while other people are shivering under blankets. Yeah, fast forward 8 weeks, I'm the guy shivering under the blanket, not eating anything. Hypersensitivity to cold. And so I did this during the winter months. So if I reached for the car door handle, I'm in New York. So if I reached for the car door handle, it was like an electric shock. Same thing getting things out of the refrigerator. Neuropathy in my feet, that hasn't gone away. It probably won't go away. There was a point where I brought my kids because their desire was to go to Universal Studios. I literally spent 16 hours in an amusement park and I was on chemo pills. In fact, my doctor, we were about 2/3 of the way in. And he said to me, look, your blood counts are dropping, your side effects are starting to mount, you're complaining more about the neuropathy. We've gotten a lot of the benefit that we would get, and now we're starting to feel the downside. And there's a tipping point where those two things begin to balance out. And I think we're there, and maybe we should think about stopping. And I said to him, there is zero chance I'm stopping. And he's like, I figured you would say that. And I said, it's like stopping at mile 18 of a marathon. Right? You told me this was going to be tough. You told me it was going to suck. I'm going to persevere through because at the outset, you told me this was my very best chance of survival. Look, I'm the Ironman triathlete. I'm the guy who has it all figured out. I'm in health and human services. Suddenly, I'm the one who's Googling all my test results. And so it was a huge role reversal. I'm much more comfortable being in that I got it helper role kind of thing as opposed to, studying the face of my doctors to figure out if they're telling me the truth and Googling my test results. I think as men, we walk around just believing, all right, we can hold it together. We're strong. We got this. Just not a winning formula for finding peace and honestly health. One of the things that changed very dramatically for me was my relationship with other guys. And so I probably have 4 or 5 close guy friends, people I've known for 30 years or whatever. And in the middle of this, they started saying we would finish lunch or dinner or whatever meal we were sharing. Generally, it was lunch. And they would say, it started like with one person doing it. And then it was like this recurring theme where they would say, I love you, saying goodbye after lunch. And I'm like, and not like the I'm drunk backslapping kind of I love you, man kind of thing, right? It was heartfelt and genuine. And every time, the first time it happened, I got into the car, I looked in the rearview mirror, I'm like, I must look sick because he thinks I'm checking out. He thinks this was like our last lunch, right? So he thinks this is it. And I didn't know what to say, and I couldn't understand why it tripped me up so much and why it was so hard to say it back or if I wanted to say it back. And I really had to think through my relationship with other men. And I will say it created a different level of trust and intimacy with my male friends. There's no evidence of disease right now, as far as we can tell. And so very guarded, I'm very clear on the language. And so after my first round of chemo and radiation, there was significant shrinkage of the tumor, really so that there was almost nothing left. There's lots of folks, I think people do this, especially with men, who, if you're going through treatment, you're a warrior. Once you finish treatment, you're a survivor. And we assign these labels to people. There was a part of me that loved that warrior kind of thing. Because I'm like, yeah, I do hard things. I love that warrior label. There was another part of me where there was times when I'm like, I don't feel like a warrior. I feel like a guy who wandered onto a battlefield looking for a restroom. Right? And I didn't ask to be on this battlefield. And so some of those terms are a little bit tough to deal with, but I was very public about it because I'm like, so you can survive hard things. And for other folks out there who are struggling, it's possible to get through. I was not that great about work-life balance when it came to navigating treatment. I didn't miss 5 minutes of work, right? And so I'm not sure that that's the best example for folks that are going through a cancer journey. But for me, it was an affirmation that I can still do all the things I did before, and I'm not going to let cancer get to me. But I've become acutely aware that we all have this invisible countdown clock that runs above our heads, and we don't see it. It's probably a good thing we don't see it, right? But it's there, and both diagnoses reminded me of, you're not going to live forever. All the things that you wanted to do, you should do because you have today, you have your health. I have far more gratitude than I ever did before. If you've experienced a diagnosis, regardless of what your journey looks like, regardless of what your prognosis looks like or what stage you're in, keep going.